I have a story about a book that nobody can read. It's seemingly impossible to decipher if it's some sort of code. And it has all of these strange illustrations in it that depict flora and fauna that don't match anything that exists on Earth today.
An alien manuscript?
Potentially. The Voynich Manuscript mystery. Hi.
Hey.
This is Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two girls, one ghost. We are your ghostesses. That's Corinne.
Hello. I was like, oh my God, am I supposed to introduce myself today?
No, and I'm Sabrina. We have a spooky episode for you. We did research. We find weird, cool things on the internet, in books, on TV shows. We research them and then surprise each other and tell each other.
Yeah, but I have a question for everyone first.
Okay.
Did anyone hex me? Just a quick, polite, I'm not mad. I just want to know, because I think what has happened to me in the past 2 weeks.
You've got a lot going on.
There's something. Someone has something.
I would say it extends beyond the last 2 weeks. You've been going through it.
Yeah, but the last 2 weeks is like
way worse.
Way worse.
Well,
2 car
I'm
accidents,
curious.
Urgent care, 911 ambulance, emergency room visit, Noah having allergic reaction, basically being pulled out of daycare. There's like 5 more things. I like broke my toe. There's a million more things.
I'm curious to rewatch the episode with Eliza Kelly, what she said about this period of time.
I don't remember there being any blaring like, oh, watch your back, Corinne.
No, but I think there was a lot of like transformation in your life of like the type of person you want to be, like the type of like person you want to be seen like publicly as.
And okay, well, maybe someone who's not injured. Someone whose child is okay.
I do remember it was like May was supposed to be like the time where things pivoted into like a really good outlook for you.
Okay.
We're close.
We're close. I mean, I just didn't know that everything would crumble right before we got to that period.
Yeah.
I thought I was already down. down. So if you hexed me,
please stop.
Just a polite request to knock it off.
To unhex.
Unhex, yeah. And then if you have the power of unhexing, I'll take it. I'll take the energy.
Yeah. Everyone who's listening, let's all manifest good energy towards Corinne and me while you're at it. You can give it to me too. I could always use it. I feel like I'm permanently down here for the last like 4 years. But yeah, just send some good energy, some unhexing, healing waves this way.
Clearly, we should move the crystal jar down here because I feel like we're missing out on the positive vibrations of all the crystals people have sent us.
I actually, when I was at my witchy class 2 weeks ago, I like had this buzzing in my hand like for so long. And I was like, what is this? Like, why am I, it was specifically my right hand. And it was just like so energetic that I was like, am I like trying to feel something? I don't know. So I went around the store because it's like a kind of like cool witchy apothecary store as well as where you take classes. And I just went around and I held a bunch of crystals to like see if anything like matched the vibration or kind of like calmed it. And I ended up getting like 3 or 4 crystals.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have them with me.
Do you know what they're for?
Yeah, I have all 4. Well, I mean, I couldn't, not off the top of my mind, but a
lot
was
of there
it,
like anything, like any clear message coming from these crystals?
A lot of them were about like centering energy and finding like peace in like a chaos. And then a lot of them were also like creativity because I was like writing. So I want to, feed my creative bug.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, I love that.
But I felt like you. I had the like Corinne buzz.
Buzzing. Isn't it weird when it happens?
It's so weird.
It's kind of cool though.
It's intense. And it wasn't stopping.
It makes me feel kind of like a superhero where I'm like, if I can harness this energy, I could like, and like throw an energy blast at someone.
The power.
Or like create a bubble, like
that's what
The Incredibles. I need a bubble. Well, you texted me and you're like, we need to put you in a bubble. I said, I'd find a way to suffocate on it, apparently, because of everything that's going on.
I feel like significantly higher up.
I know you do.
This is the new chair.
That is the new chair, which is odd.
I feel like I'm wearing a booster seat. Remember when we went and saw Beetlejuice?
Yes.
And we got the booster seats?
Oh,
on Broadway.
Wait, okay, in my mind, I was like, wait a second, I couldn't go to the new Beetlejuice movie.
when we went on, we went
got
to see
drinks
it,
and booster seats.
and we got drinks and booster seats. We saw it on Broadway. We were
Because
like,
we're adult children.
we were in the last row of the orchestra. And we were like, well, we're not going to be blocking anyone and everyone's blocking us. So
we got booster seats.
Yeah. And it was great.
And then we cried at intermission. God, the first act was so good. So emotional. Oh my gosh. Well, I have a story for today. It is about a book that nobody can read. It is one of the greatest literary enigmas of maybe the entire existence of humanity. The book is written in a language no one knows. It's seemingly impossible to decipher if it's some sort of code. And it has all of these strange illustrations in it that depict basically like flora and fauna that don't match anything that exists on Earth today.
What?
It has constellations that don't match anything in our galaxy. And it has these humanoid figures that aren't quite perfectly human.
An alien manuscript?
Potentially.
Okay.
Like some alien came here and was journaling and dropped their journal.
Or that it was their journal from their other planet and they left it behind.
Right, exactly.
Because is there anything Earth-like on it?
It kind of feels like Avatar. Like it feels like if you were shown something, you'd be like, that's a plant. Or that's a flower. But
that doesn't exist here.
It doesn't exist here.
This is so cool.
From World War II codebreakers to cutting-edge AI specialists, no one has been able to make a clear translation. Really, no one's been able to translate anything at all. Some believe it to be a long-lost alchemical manuscript. Some people think it's hiding these forgotten remedies and secret knowledge reserved for the elite few. So very conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Others suspect it's an elaborate hoax crafted centuries ago to mystify and mislead.
Which I'm on board for that theory just because I respect whoever did that and put that much effort into it. If that is the case, mad respect.
Mad respect. But also like how confusing for us now. And then there are a few who question whether its origins are entirely of this world. Could this be a journal left behind from another planet?
Mm-hmm.
This is the mystery of the Voynich Manuscript.
Voynich sounds very Russian. Is it Russian?
The guy who found it
was
more
Russian.
recently is from the Ukraine.
Okay.
So that region. The story starts in the 17th century, but for us, it starts in 1912 because Mikha Voynich had intended to become a pharmacist when he was younger, but then when he was 20, he joined the First Proletariat, which was this revolutionary organization run by a Ukrainian philosopher and activist. This is like literally feels like it's out of a movie. So he joined this essentially revolution. And he was part of a team that was set to break into the Warsaw Citadel, which was this giant prison in Poland that had been holding a lot of the people from this like revolutionary group. So he was like trying to break out his friends.
Okay.
He didn't succeed.
Oh, no.
In fact, he was caught. He was sentenced to hard labor in Serbia until he escaped in 1890.
Okay, so he didn't succeed at freeing all of his friends, but he escaped.
He escaped. But like this whole thing, I'm like, what am I watching?
It's like a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he relocated to London, which is where he made a career pivot. He was no longer this revolutionary activist and protester.
Mm-hmm.
He was now moving into the world of antique books and becoming a rare book collector.
I would love to follow suit.
Right? So he got his citizenship in England and he chose to anglicize his name. So he was now going by Wilfred Michael Voynich. Wilfred Voynich operated a rare bookstore in Soho Square in London. And he would spend a lot of his time outside of the store and basically traveling the world, trying to like track down rare books and antiquities.
It's like the perfect combination between archaeologist and professional antiquer.
Yeah, right? And like I feel like he kind of had the skill set already for someone to kind of go into like the weirdest, darkest corners of the world.
He's
based on what
basically
he was doing.
Nicolas Cage in all of Nicolas
literally,
Cage
I wrote that
movies.
later on. I was like, this is National Treasure. You can't tell me this is not a National Treasure plot. It's so wild. Okay, so his pursuits in finding these forgotten texts and these rare books led him to Italy, to a 350-year-old estate called Villa Mondragone. Mondragongi?
Mange la pasta.
Which is not even Italian. But this village was just outside of Rome. And this village has existed for quite a few centuries, but it's always essentially been owned by the Vatican. So the Vatican ran this village in 1620, basically opened it a few centuries later as this university. So it was a college. It was a Jesuit college, kind of like if we took our college, LMU, and made it its own little bubble and its own little village, and everyone there was basically, it was college town.
Yeah. Okay.
Run by the Vatican. For a few decades, it functioned as this Jesuit college, but then the Jesuits basically fell on some hard times and the college closed and they had to sell off a bunch of their historical artifacts from the school. And that is when Wilfred went to purchase some of these rare books and sift through all of like the vintage finds that they were selling. It is thought that this is how he came into possession of what is now known as the Voynich Manuscript, although he kind of did go back on his story a few times. So at first he was like, this is where I went to find the book. But then he contradicted his story later on and said that he actually found it in a castle in southern Europe. And people were like, okay, this doesn't discredit the story because he was a rare book collector. And if he has some like hookups and some places that he likes to sift through, you don't want to basically tell everyone where you're finding the coolest shit.
Sure, that, but also, like, did he go on one big trip and collect a bunch of books along this trip? And it's not until he's back home that he's really looking through them.
No, because he did say that this really stuck out.
Okay.
So, it like his eyes went to this book.
That does seem a little sus to me because I'm like, if it sticks out that much, you know where you got it.
But he doesn't want other people to go. It's like when you're an antiquer and you have like this one golden antique store and you're like, well, if I tell everyone, I'm never going to find any of like the good furniture. It's all going to be sifted through.
I guess. But if you got it from like an old mansion, then hypothetically, it's been cleared out. Like it was an estate sale of sorts.
Well, I don't know where he got it. That's the thing. We don't know if this is like this unending.
Did he create it? Because that would also be awesome.
Well, if some people have theorized that, but it's like kind of impossible too, based on carbon dating, which they did later on.
Okay.
Yeah. And also like he had so much wealth. So he was spending like millions and millions of dollars collecting these items. And then what he was worth for these items was just, it was huge. So also it's not like, you know, me going to like a Goodwill and being like, this is a great coffee table. I'm not going to tell anyone about this Goodwill location. Right. There's a lot of money and a lot of competition. Yeah. It is national treasure. There's a lot of bad people.
I feel like when you have more money, you become more greedy.
Yeah, more secretive. Either way, Wilfred found himself in possession of this text that would rock the world of scholars, of linguists, of historians, and codebreakers for over a century.
Damn.
The Voynich Manuscript is a 240-page vellum, which I looked up vellum because I was like, what does this again
mean? Yeah.
It's a medieval paper made from calfskin or animal membrane. So basically, like they would just dry animal skin to write on. So it's a 240-page vellum book containing hundreds of hand-drawn pictures of plants, animals, astrological symbols. Only the drawings are all slightly off. We know what they're depicting, but we do not know what they match because they don't match anything physically here on Earth.
That's so wild.
The botanical species are not from this planet. The astrological symbols do not align with what we know of our sky. The script is fanciful. It only contains 11 letters in total. Each word contains 2 to 10 characters. There's no punctuation at all. It's like run-on sentences the whole time. It's also written from left to right, which would make you think that it's like from the Western world.
Right.
Because in the Eastern, they write right to left. But obviously, maybe also not from this planet. And because there's no punctuation, it's also made it basically impossible for people to understand where something starts and where it ends because there's no sentence structure, which makes it harder to break a code if it is written in code. Also, all of the letters, since there are only 11 letters in total, it has made people wonder if these 11 letters are spelling an alphabet, like spelling out a word, or if we take like Mandarin, for example, a lot of the symbols act as their own word. So it's so difficult.
And we're not language experts. And so like, and the fact that language experts have studied this and it's not.
No one can figure it out.
It makes no sense. I'm looking at pictures of this.
The text was written next to the hand-drawn pictures. So it does look like someone is journaling and documenting all of the species that they're seeing, looking up at the sky. It's like, it kind of reminds me of like explorers' journals.
Right.
Where, you know, like perhaps they were talking about what they were doing today, but then there's a drawing of like a buffalo and a cotton plant and the Milky Way galaxy across the sky. You know, like we're seeing all that in journals. And this is very, very similar. It just makes no sense.
These are wild. Looking at these photos.
Also, there are numerous pages missing. And there's no way to know how many pages are missing. But like, I don't think that would help. Like, it's probably
also, it probably was because that was like detailing his love life. Like, and he was just like, I can't. I got to rip these out before I leave this behind.
All of the Dear Diary. He got into journaling. First, it was like all about his adventures with plants and
Yeah.
whatnot. And then it was like, oh, I met this special someone.
Yeah.
And then they ripped him out because that's
Right.
sometimes it's embarrassing.
Maybe they
to look
broke
back
up
on it.
and, you know.
Yeah, you got to rip it from your journal.
Yeah.
So the question remained, who the hell wrote this journal?
Right.
So Wilfred, he had a bookshop in London, but then
Mhm.
he decided to open a second rare bookshop location in the United States in New York City. And then a year
Whoa.
after that, in October of 1915, he oversaw this exhibition at the Art Institute of Chicago, where he displayed many of his rare books. And this was the first time the Voynich Manuscript basically was put on display and publicly spoken about.
Whoa.
And he declared, like in his description of what it was, he essentially said, this is an unsolved cipher manuscript authored by Roger Bacon in the 13th century.
Who's that?
Right. Okay, so Roger Bacon is a 13th century friar and philosopher known for his contributions to the field of mathematics, astronomy, linguistics, alchemy, and his many writings on universal grammar. He apparently is the prime suspect for authorship of the Voynich Manuscript.
Suspect.
Prime suspect.
This is a criminal.
I'm treating
case.
it as such. Who is making us confused in the current century? You're under arrest. He could read, write, and speak many, many languages. He published texts on alchemy and the origins of the uses of metals. And he was basically like one of the most brilliant minds of his time. And people are like, well, it would make sense that it would be him because this journal is essentially like everything he studied. And if he's studying grammar and language and stuff, it's like, did he just make one up himself?
But if he was such a well-known person, scientist, mind back then, presumably they have a lot of his records, documents, and there would be something that resembles this.
Right. This is such a one-off. It doesn't really make sense.
Right.
So he was ahead of his time. He was a bit of a controversial figure when he was alive. The church actually viewed his work as black magic and sorcery. So they were like, you're a wizard and we hate you and we might try to kill you. And he was clearly brilliant because he was like, guess what? I'm going to gaslight and manipulate you, Mr. Church. And so he joined the Catholic Church as a friar and said, oh, wait, no, I'm actually helping you because this is God's green earth and I'm helping you get closer to God by learning about his creations. And they were like, whoa, you're right, Mr. Wizard. And then they made him Sir Friar Bacon.
Related to Kevin Bacon.
Everyone is. By what, 6 degrees?
6 degrees, yeah. 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Something like that. So it's thought that maybe perhaps Roger Bacon did author this text, either using some code that we've not been able to solve or via his own language, made up and spoken by only one person, which is him. But why would he do that? What is his motivation when he was trying to contribute so much already in the form of text and kind of like dodging people who were trying to stop him? Why would he go to such great lengths?
Well, who's to say? I mean, I feel like I refer to this all the time, but Project Lanulos or Planet Lanulos.
Yeah.
And
I like how you said project, though. It does make it's going to be a project in our future,
project,
and
right?
then move to the planet.
Like, what if Indrid Cold was abducting people back then and sharing knowledge and giving information? And it makes me think of our listener, Kin, who sent us the email where she was like on an alien spacecraft. They were walking her around these rooms that held different creatures and animals, some that she recognized, some that were so foreign and mysterious,
right,
but belonged to other planets.
Yes. It reminded me too of the book Down a Dark Hall, where it's kind of like you're getting this download, you're getting this information from the astral plane. And then in a way, it also kind of reminded me of mental illness, where people can, you know, someone might be thinking that they're solving this like insane math equation and then they come out of their state and they look and it doesn't make any sense to them anymore. I don't know, but it does kind of seem more like Kin's experience could be right, because if he was abducted and he was seeing or like somehow went to some other world, it would make sense that he was chronicling things like this. Although I will say, I don't think he has any other journals that match this sort of like vibe, you know? It has a lot of bright
Maybe he was
colors.
very organized.
Well, this manuscript is organized.
Right, so he kept everything about this in this manuscript.
Yeah, but if he was studying these things on Earth, don't you think he would have similar paintings and drawings?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, why would he do it? What is his motivation? People don't really know.
Is there a handwriting analysis? Can you match? Granted, I know it's not the same letters, but like, is there a way for them to analyze his other documents and like stroke of the pen?
Oh, maybe. I don't think that anyone has done that, or at least in the research that I did, I didn't see that anyone has done that.
I'm going to solve it.
The letters people have said that they resemble like Arabic letters.
Mm.
And one of the podcasts that did a 2-part series on this, conspiracy theories on Spotify, they compared it to Lord of the Rings, like elfish writing. Some people have thought maybe this also because he was being declared as a wizard and practicing black magic, that this could have been essentially like a attempt at a big old F you. I'm going to make myself weirder and you fear me even more. But I don't think that makes that much sense.
Right.
Or maybe it does, because Roger Bacon was also associated with something else a bit otherworldly, a brazen head or a necromantic head, which was this automated mechanical structure or sculpture made of brass and bronze and said to be possessed by dark evil spirits that could answer yes or no questions. So it's basically like our modern day Zoltar, where you go and you like put your 50 cents in and get a fortune.
I think he was onto something.
Right? Because how do you make stone speak and answer yes or no?
It's like a form of divination.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, some people say that Roger Bacon certainly created this, but others say, no, this is just a part of his lore. This thing didn't actually exist. It's just like more reporting and rumors about this guy who like knows too much and has to be practicing the dark arts in order to do that.
He's a mystery, yeah.
He is a mystery. So it is thought that perhaps he did experiment with some necromancy, and maybe he did have powers and abilities and knowledge beyond our comprehension. But apparently the reason why Roger Bacon is credited with creating the Voynich Manuscript is because Wilfred, when he purchased the manuscript, he found a letter written in Latin tucked between the pages, which Roger definitely knew Latin, and it was written to a reverend declaring the book to have been purchased by the Emperor Rudolph II, who was the Holy Roman Emperor, King of Hungary and Croatia, King of Bohemia, and Archduke of Austria. That's way too many titles.
So many, yeah.
And he believed that it had been authored by Roger Bacon. So it's basically like this person said that they got it from this king or emperor, and the emperor said that he thought it was from Roger Bacon. So it's like hearsay.
So the emperor bought it from Roger Bacon.
Or the emperor just said he thought it was authored by Roger Bacon.
Gotcha. Interesting.
But anyway, that's what the note said. So Wilfred Voynich was like, oh my gosh, this was authored by Roger Bacon. I'm putting that up in the Art Institute of Chicago and declaring this done and permanent. So the manuscript then gained a ton of attention after this exhibition was publicized, and the intrigue of others fueled Wilfred Voynich to crack the code and unveil the mystery of his now most famous and most prized possession, this manuscript.
To crack the code?
Attempt. It's still unsolved.
Yeah.
For the next 18 years, he enlisted book dealers, historians, linguists, and philosophers to work on deciphering this text with him. So he wasn't being selfish, being like, this is my own thing, like blah, blah, blah. He was like, oh, we got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes. One philosopher, William Romain Newbold, passed away before completing his research, but he declared an equation for solving the cipher before his passing. So he basically was like, oh, I've already decoded a bunch of passages. Here's what you have to do. You have to find the spot that seems to be the beginning. Then you log the shorthand characters, transcribe the order, translate into ordinary letters, double everyone but the first and last number, then divide into pairs, then change every letter, which is in a pair, to one of the letters in Latin, and so on. And so it's like a cipher for a cipher, right? It's so freaking confusing. And a lot of people were like, wait, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But basically he was saying that this entire manuscript was written in shorthand, which I was like, okay, I kind of actually get that, because, you know, in courts, they use one of those, the steno machine to transcribe anything. Have you seen those machines and what they look like?
Mm-mm.
There's like, I don't know, like 10 keys. So you don't even have the full alphabet. And you basically have to memorize this code if you're a transcriber. And that's how they keep up with all the words. So like it'll look like this. They'll punch in a bunch of letters and stuff, and it will equal in the end words, which I don't understand how anyone can memorize. It's like another language. So I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. Maybe this was the OG like steno machine coding whoever wrote this was doing. But apparently Newbold, despite saying he had translated a bunch of it, after he passed away, people were examining his equation, trying to do the cipher, and they declared it basically gibberish. They said, no, he made this up. He made huge leaps in logic. This was not actually...
no success here.
This wasn't working out. Okay, so still unsolved. Wilfred Voynich passed away. It's 1930. He has died. His wife inherits all of his estate and belongings.
Okay.
Ethel Voynich takes the manuscript and is like, I'm going to keep up with people studying it. Like this cannot just die with Wilfred.
Yeah.
And so she invites a bunch of codebreakers to come and crack the cipher. but still nothing. Copies are made of the manuscript so everyone can study it. It doesn't just have to be people who can visit where Ethel's located. The more eyes, the better. And in 1944, cryptographer William Friedman, a U.S. government intelligence worker and codebreaker, dove into the manuscript. And he had cracked the Japanese code machines during World War II. So, like, this guy could do things.
Damn.
And then his wife, Elizabeth, was a cryptanalyst who decoded thousands of messages for the U.S. government and has a movie made about her. So they were like this intense code-breaking duo, the Codebreaker.
I wonder if I've seen it.
Yeah, there's like a few movies that have that sort of vibe because there's different historical figures like who have done those sort of things, but hers is the Codebreaker.
Okay.
Clearly, like, I'm sure his wife also looked at this with him.
Right.
But he created a team who transcribed every line of the Voynich manuscript onto the IBM punch card to feed into the machine so that the computer could work out any math problems and basically lead to it being solved if it was a cipher.
Gotcha. This is 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which is what they did in the wars.
But this is also like 1930 code breaking is very different than like AI and, you know, stuff that could be happening today.
AI still can't do it.
Crazy.
There's a spoiler alert. So yeah, the IBM machine didn't get it. Nothing. The machine did identify some repeated patterns, but no one could understand really still what it meant. No one could read the Voynich manuscript. So now it's 1960. Okay. Ethel Voynich has now passed away. And her close friend and an employee of the Voynich's bookstore, Anne Nill, she inherited the book and the rest of the Voynich collection. She actually, like, in order to keep the bookstore going and basically keep herself out of poverty, she did have to sell off the majority of the collection. So that included the Voynich manuscript, which I'm sure was like the prized item people paid a lot for.
Yeah.
So Peter Krause is the guy who bought it. He tried to sell it for way too much money. No one wanted to buy it for how much he wanted to sell it for. So then he ended up taking it to the Vatican and going through their library, looking for any sort of clues that match, which this is where I was like, this is national treasure. This is like all of these people going on these adventures. He couldn't find anything within the Vatican, despite it supposedly being in possession of, like, originally from the Jesuits in the Vatican. He eventually donated it to the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University. And then in 1972, Prescott Currier, a Navy captain who'd previously worked with Friedman, declared the Voynich manuscript unsolvable. Why? Because he said it's written in a language that has been long gone. It has to be some dead language that is impossible to discover at this point. But that doesn't make sense to me, because if it was a language, like, there wouldn't be like a code to break. We'd be able to understand patterns.
This is reminding me so much of when I was in Amsterdam. I went to Bibliotheca Philosophica Hermetica, which is like the largest collection of texts around
was it exorcisms or something?
No, like alchemy, hermetica, mysticism, like religion, and like grimoires and magical texts. It's called also the Rittman Library. I remember walking through it, and there are so many visuals that kind of remind me of this. And I'm like, I'm curious, because it's not a religious text. It's clearly not of anything we are aware of.
Yeah, it's earth and space science.
That I am curious if you compare to some of these manuscripts, if there's any similarities. Like, look to astrology and look to space first.
Well, because there's all these like geometric patterns and constellations and whatnot in this book, and they don't match anything that we can see in our sky.
I don't know.
It's all weird.
It is weird.
Okay, so then a few years later, National Security Agent James R. Child said that it had to be written by two different people in some sort of unknown North Germanic dialect. So people are just throwing any idea out there. So then a few years after that, cryptographer Mary Dempereau raised the question of the manuscript being a hoax. She said, is this intentionally unsolvable? British professor Gordon Rugg also noted that this could be actually a hoax, because not anywhere in the manuscript is there any area that would indicate that there was an error. So basically, it's like, how many times do you journal in ink, no less, and you don't make any errors that you have to scratch out and rewrite a word or like change what something looks like?
I understand that, but there are perfectionists, and like there are pages clearly ripped out. So
that's
like
true.
Maybe that does
every
indicate
mistake
error.
Could have been ripped out.
Yeah,
that's a good point. That's actually what triggered my mom to send me to therapy for OCD in high school, because I couldn't take notes, because every time I made an error, I'd rip the page out and restart. So I would get like 4 sentences in and I was screwing up in class.
Yeah.
Anywho, mental illness, isn't it? Okay. So Roger Bacon, he lived in the 1200s, the 13th century. Yale University in 2009 decided to have this manuscript carbon dated.
Love that.
So they sent it to the University of Arizona and it came back as being 571 to 605 years old, which means that it was likely written between year 1404 and 1438, which would be impossible for Roger Bacon to have been the scribe.
He lived before that.
He died in 1292.
Okay.
So 150 years before.
Right.
So while some people think that this could be a hoax, others question if it was written in an ancient language lost to time. And as years pass, we become further and further from ever being able to decipher it. Because it would make sense if it was written in code or a cipher in a language that is now dead. But it still doesn't answer what are these things that are in the book.
Well, and also that totally just like writes off Roger Bacon. Like he didn't write it. It's impossible for him to.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, they can carbon date when these pages were written and whatnot, but can they do more analysis of like what animal this came from? Is there any like sediments or like different qualities held
with the
within
actual,
the
like, vellum
skin
paper
that could maybe prove whether it's from Earth or not?
That's a good point. Because you should be able to also know what the dye from the ink was made from.
What was that made
and then
from?
that will tell you where in the world the ink was obtained.
There's also color and like what was used for that. I'm no scientist, but
Yale, you have more
scientists
to offer us.
I'm here to workshop some ideas to help you find other scientists to do the actual work.
Well, a lot of people, because science has not solved it yet,
Yeah.
have believed that this could be a result of autonomic writing. So basically, when people are in this sort of meditative state, it's sort of the Down of Dark Hall version, where they essentially become possessed. And it doesn't have to be just from a ghost that lived on Earth. It could be some sort of alien species or something. But basically, like, whoever wrote this was a channel for someone else to write and draw.
Aliens.
Aliens, right? It all comes back to aliens, and it always does.
Which could be us from the past, from the future.
We don't know.
We have no idea.
Others suggest that this was a lost work of the Cathars or another persecuted sect hiding their knowledge in code to prevent their wisdom from being destroyed by religious authorities, which just also kind of reminds me of ancient Egypt and like some of the pictures and stuff that do kind of seem to be depicting an energy source and like harnessing energy, but like we don't get it.
Yeah.
Or we do and we're refusing to accept it.
It's like almost like the more advanced we become, the dumber we've become.
Yeah. This is so conspiracy theorist of me, but like I do kind of believe in the sort of like resets, you know?
100%. And I also think about like, it goes back to the Mandela effect. Like, how does that come into play? If we can forget or completely like misremember, and generations of people can misremember the name of a book, like what else could be erased or changed and altered in our memories?
Well, and you're making me think of time slips now, because what if someone was in the 1400s actually journeying somewhere, went through some sort of like little wormhole accidentally and was in some other version of Earth chronicling this.
Right.
And found their way back, but was like in this weird time slip.
Left their journal behind.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
don't know.
This is the most conspiracy episode. I mean, because there's so much work that has been done to try to analyze and do a code break of this. But
and
there
the best
are no
minds
answers.
For over a century.
Right. So maybe the answers are not logic. Maybe the answers are paranormal or supernatural or beyond us.
Right. And it is so wild too, because it's not like it's just historians or just code breakers.
Right.
Like it's people from
all over.
All over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone who has like the slightest bit of ability to potentially answer this is looking at it, and no one can figure it out.
Damn.
Some people wonder if the Voynich Manuscript was never meant to be read in a traditional sense, but rather is some type of encoded map, perhaps leading to an undiscovered relic or knowledge hidden somewhere on Earth.
Maybe I need to take my buzzing hand and go put it on top of the manuscript and just absorb all the energy.
And we take a journey to the center of the Earth.
Yes.
This is Inner Earth. Now we're talking about Inner Earth conspiracies. Earth is hollow. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Definitely not.
And then, of course, there are the extraterrestrial theories. Some claim that the unknown planets and cosmic diagrams are evidence of knowledge brought to Earth from another world. and that this book is basically alien botany that we're being exposed to,
Okay.
and record of some forgotten contact that happened in the 1400s.
Could it not also be like the version of James Cameron's Avatar? Like, is this not some like creative piece that someone just wrote back then?
Right. Well, because also in Avatar, they made their own language.
Right. Same with like Game of Thrones.
Was this?
And Lord of the Rings.
Was Cameron and Tolkien, were they just like living in the 1400s doing this sort of shit?
Right.
And then they were reincarnated
and now down a dark hall. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Huh. So the Voynich Manuscript remains one of history's most fascinating mysteries, an unreadable book waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. Could it be an ancient code waiting for the right mind to break it? An elaborate hoax stretching centuries? Or is it something far stranger? A message not meant for us at all.
Or meant for us, but not yet.
Not yet.
One day someone will come along and they'll be like, I can decode it.
When you get taken to Lanulos,
yeah,
you'll come back and you'll be like, oh, I know exactly what these plants are. Oh, I can read this.
And don't worry.
It's partial tongue.
Crazy.
Well, that's the thing is like, if it was like this paranormal thing where let's say that you suddenly were struck with the ability to read this.
Right.
But you couldn't understand why you could read it or what these things were. It's another thing where I feel like people would just be like, that makes no sense. Like, you're not to be believed.
Toss her in the loony bin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's impossible. This text is impossible. The Voynich Manuscript mystery.
Wow. That is wild.
Right?
I also feel like there's so many things like this in the world that exist that are confounding to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like you brought up Egyptians and like hieroglyphs and some of their renderings and drawings of things that we don't know how to decipher.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because I feel like a lot of those things, there's a small sample. But with the Voynich Manuscript, it is 240 pages.
Massive book. Yeah.
Right. So it's not like there's something etched off of a piece of stone and you're trying to figure out like the missing piece.
So this reminds me of House of Leaves, I want to say is called. And I showed you this book. So one of our listeners recommended it. And I'll have to bring it one time and I'll show everyone on YouTube the like visual of it. But I think there's like lore with it where it was like passed around and never was like fully finished. But like there are some pages where like the book is written like spiraling around.
Yeah.
And there are other pages where it looks like Morse code. Someone recently was like, thanks for the recommendation. I love this book. I'm like, how are you reading it? Because I need to know. I need help.
Yeah, I don't know if it was recommended as much as it was just talked about.
And I have it because I was like, I want to buy this and I'm curious. Yeah. And I'm confused. I have a movie recommendation, then I have a listener email.
Okay.
This movie is so good. It's called Presence. It just came out. It's so good. It's paranormal.
What is it about?
But it's like a family drama and a paranormal thing, kind of Haunting of Hill Housey. It's this family that moves into a new house.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately like the daughter like starts to feel a presence. And she had recently lost a friend to drugs, or she died in her sleep, something like that. And that's all I'll say. It's a family drama.
Presence.
It's so good.
Presence or the presence?
Just Presence. Presence.
Okay.
Well, there was nothing about the manuscript in our inbox. Surprising.
No one solved it. None of our listeners solved it.
But I do have an email from our listener, Millie, and it is called Religious Texts and Ghosts. Hi, girls. This email is a response to your query in Encounters 103. I'm very far behind, but I'm catching up. In this episode, Corinne pondered whether it's just a Bible or if it's any religious text that can be attacked or tampered with by spirits. And I am here to answer you from the eclectic witch point of view with my experiences with my ghost and my grimoire.
Oh, so cool.
2019. It was a normal night in the north of England. Stormy, rainy, cold. Us Northerners are very used to this, and us Northerners who are open to spirits like myself are especially used to the cold. This was around Samhain, which is Halloween for the benefit of non-witches, and the veil between the worlds is its thinnest. This is a normal transition that witches and or sensitives prepare for, myself included. I was ready. My granddad had recently passed away from old age in his sleep, and this would be the first Samhain since his passing. I was ready to say goodbye, as I didn't get to in real life, and I was hoping that he'd be strong enough to cross over. I knew that my nanny had been waiting for him, and had been waiting for him since 1998 when she passed away. So I wasn't sure if he would come through or if he had already passed on and was with her. Anyway, I had my rite all set up. The salt circle, the white candles, the offerings to the dead. I had blueberry muffins, as these were my granddad's favorite. And I had my book of shadows, a book I write my own rites and spells in, and my grimoire, which is a book of spells passed to me by my mom as a Wiccan tradition. So cool.
Cool. Oh.
Both were open in front of me on the collective rite communicating with spirits Samhain. There was a short spell written in the grimoire that I was prepared to say at midnight when the veil dropped entirely. I was ready. My candles lit. The gods I wanted present had been called. My black cat familiar slept not too far away. Midnight came, and I prepared to call my granddad forth. I said the incantation and waited for his familiar tobacco smell. The candles blew out. I didn't panic. This was not out of the ordinary for necrotic rites, so I found my matches in the moonlight shining through the skylight, ready to light them again. But before I could, the grimoire in front of me started making a shuffling noise as if someone was turning the pages. This was not part of the rite, but I didn't panic. I wondered if someone wanting my clairaudient help was trying to communicate. So I lit the candle again and made to light the other 4 when that spirit candle blew out. Granddad? I asked. No response. My heart started pounding at this point. This was not normal, but I was still prepared. As a witch doing a spiritual rite on Samhain, you can't not be. So again, I lit the spirit candle, and again, it blew out. Okay, I said out loud, who are you? Can I help you move on so I can get back to what I want to be doing? To be honest, I was a little annoyed in this situation. And at once, 3 things happened. 1, the spirit candle sparked a light again, and the grimoire page was now open to that of exorcism. The light from the candle was now lighting my familiar's bright green eyes. He was staring at the grimoire from outside the salt circle and started yowling. Now, my cat Jinx is not a vocal cat. The only time we hear him is when we take him to the vet. And she spelled out V-E-T because she can't say it out loud to the cat.
Oh.
But now he was hissing and yowling with anger. And 3, my clairaudient ears heard loud and clear a laugh that seemed to say, you think you can get rid of me? I've always been stubborn. So I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to damn try because now I'm really pissed at this intrusion. And like every good witch, I had my colored candles next to me in the salt circle just in case. I struck a black candle, the one used for exorcism, and used all of my will to keep it lit. This spirit was not going to tamper with this. Jinx is now pacing outside the salt circle as if giving me backup. I love having such a loyal familiar. And I started to recite the spell that the entity had chosen in my grimoire. Really, they seemed their own doom, and they messed with the wrong witch. I recited the words 3 times, as is lore in the Wicca I was raised in, and I said the final, so mote it be. Jinx stopped prowling, the black candle snuffed itself out, and the white candles relit themselves. And I felt the entity leave. You messed with the wrong witch, bitch. Unfortunately, this little event meant that I didn't get to speak with my granddad. The Vale in 2020 was too congested after the pandemic, and he couldn't get through. So I couldn't then either, but my fingers are crossed for Samhain 2021. I've moved back in with my parents, and my mom and I are planning a dumb supper to invite granddad and nanny. A dumb supper?
What is that?
What is that? I don't know. Jinx will be there too, the 3rd witch to our coven. Thank you for reading. Basically, yes, other religious and belief texts can channel spirits like my grimoire did in this experience. I love you both and your podcast so much. Millie from the UK.
Wow. Okay. Well, honestly, thank God for her history of being a witch and her family and being the most prepared you could possibly be in this situation.
Right.
Because that is really frightening. And to hear the voice that's like,
ha.
Right. The challenge. Because in case you thought maybe you were just reading into the situation, you now have basically confirmation that no, there's something that's trying to stop you.
Well, and I think that this also just proves that you can be a seasoned witch or spiritual practitioner, whatever you want to call it. And there are times where dark things are going to still come through and they're still going to tempt you and they're still going to try to taunt you, whatever it is. And I think that's why we have had such hesitance around Ouija boards and opening communication in certain ways, because you could be the most well-practiced witch and still you never know what's going to come through.
I know. Spooky, scary.
Spooky, scary.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
I want to do a Samhain ritual.
I was thinking about it when you were talking about it, and I was like, I don't think I ever could because you have to stay up till midnight.
Yeah. You've done it.
I've stayed up till midnight.
You've stayed up past midnight for investigations.
Yeah, but that was pre-baby.
That's true. You're going to have to do it again sometime soon because I'm taking you somewhere scary. We have to go to Waverly Hills.
I know, but not right now.
We gotta get the
world
hex
would burn.
We gotta get the
hexes
hex
gotta
removed
lift.
first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this makes me think. I was about to conclude, but what if someone took the Voynich Manuscript into a witch salt circle ritual? What would happen? Is it a grimoire? Like,
would all the letters start to and suddenly it unveils what it's trying to say?
Or would it flip open to a page and like a spirit would come forth? I don't know.
I'm sure they haven't tried that.
Right.
And they've tried a lot of things. And there's also so much focus on the text. And I'm like, what about the images?
Right. Because there was one image with like almost like human-like bodies.
Like coming out of what kind of looks like a Venus
portal.
Fly trap.
It's a portal. It's going to teach us how to teleport.
Done. CIA,
hire us.
You're fired.
We are hired.
We're hired.
You're going to feel extra safe with us watching your back. Anyway, yes. If you have emails, anything spooky, paranormal, if you have grimoires that you've passed down through generations, can you send us pictures? Email us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com.
You can follow us on social media. You can watch us on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want all of the episodes ad-free 1 week early and additional episodes, you can check out our Patreon.
The March Patreon bonus episode, all I'll say is cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
Thank you to Jamie, who edits and produces our podcast.
Yeah. And thank you to all of you. We love you.
And we will see you on the other side.